Okay. Okay. All right. It is about 8:32. Welcome to week 2 of Drugs and Crime. I'm Professor Richard Wright, and I'm going to spend the next hour or so. Um, well, that's wrong. That was yesterday's, wasn't it? God, I get my days mixed up. That was yesterday. So today is introduction to uh, criminal law. I teach both classes. I teach one Monday and one Tuesday. So today is Tuesday, and welcome to introduction to criminal law. Don't change the cut out the classes. Oh, it's wrong class. Nope. Because some of you are in both classes. I think maybe both of you are in both classes. I know at least one of you is in um, both of those classes. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to share my screen. All right. So we're going to move on down here. And I do have drugs and crime pulled up. So let's pull up the right course. And it is this one. So the home page looks the same till we get down here. And you see our schedule where we had week 1 last Wednesday. So starting today, uh, every Tuesday, and today is the 19th, roughly from 8:30 to 9:30 p.m. And then I will have the recording here after that. So now let's take a look at the week 2 announcement. Okay, this week we're going to talk about crimes against property. Crimes against property. And I sent you chapters 3, 4, and 12 of the textbook. And we're going to go over the activities. What are crimes against property? Larceny, robbery, or burglary, misappropriation, trespassing, and vandalism. And then we're going to look at the key terms for practice, and then which crimes are crime against property. And then we're going to look at the quiz briefly, which is the preparation. As I said before, each week you'll have a practice quiz, and that's in preparation for next week, week 3, when we will have the actual, what we call midterm. You can believe it already that next week will be the midterm already. So it goes that fast. And then you're going to have the discussion posts. This is one of my favorite ones: robbery, burglary, and theft. And, we're going to talk about that tonight. Not specifically regarding the post, but you'll hear me explain why what fits in terms of that. And that initial post is due tonight at 11:59 p.m. Central Standard, and Saturday at 11:59 p.m. Central Standard. And then finally, identity theft problem, uh, the written assignment for identity theft this week. And then you know about my motto. All right, those of you know from my other classes, and you also know from last week when I talked about it. Here is the course calendar. Shows you where we are right here. And again, you can click on it and it opens up and it gives you more details. Our live lecture. And then there's your reply post due Saturday the 23rd. And your written assignment is due on the 24th, which is Sunday. And then your key phrase should be in here too. Here it is. The key word is do also. All right. So that's the calendar. And then, as I always do, I remind you again, every week, I remind students when the course ends. The course ends on the 19th, which is a Friday. Okay. So you'll see, and that's Friday, June the 19th. I do it all the time, and inevitably, the way I did, as I had some people that I did last well, it wasn't T2, T1. It was actually the bachelor's program where there's some one or two students that tried to submit assignments the day after, and they did submit them, but I blocked them from the grade book because it can't be counted no matter how late. And one was as close as 12:35 a.m., but it was still after 11:59 p.m. Central Standard, which means it could not be accepted because it was late. So you don't want to be late with that assignment. All right, so now let's shut this down and let's go to week 2 module, crimes against property, and let's take a deeper look at the assignments. Okay, so with the robbery, burglary, and theft, you have Debbie, who commits several offenses or an offense, not answering it. And that the question is whether she is guilty of one or more of these charges: robbery, burglary, or theft. Okay, and then so you got your initial post that's due tonight, and then your reply post on Saturday. So now let's take a look at the actual written assignment. Move this up here. Okay, so now your written assignment has several parts to it. In fact, it has 2 parts to it. And the first part, you're going to look at this scenario here. That is says scenario, and you'll answer these questions in a minimum of 2 pages, not counting the reference page, not counting the cover page. So you're going to list the elements of the offense and explain how they've been met. Now, you don't, when it says list, you don't do a up and down. You write about them in your paper. That's what it means. Every time I have this assignment, a student says, can I list the elements? I says, well, no, you can't, because if you list them, then you're going to be trying to get your 2-page minimum satisfied. That's not going to happen. Explain what types of crime that were committed, why the type of evidence at the suspect's residence, what type of evidence was at the residence, and provide at least 2 examples that you might find. 2, not 1, but 2 examples that might be found. Okay, how might Sam have obtained the victim's social security number in order to open the credit card account and obtain employment? And if he has a fake social security card, what technology may be used to create that account? If you use your textbook, which you will or could, but I prefer you to stick to outside sources. You can use your textbook, but make sure that you cite your sources, including a reference page, APA citations in the body, references at the end, and make sure that it's double space. All right, and the proper Roman font. And so be sure to cite the sources. I totally believe in my students, and you've learned this about me if you've had me for more than one class or for any classes, that I like I like sources cited. And the reason why I like them is because of the fact that they give credibility to statements in your paper. In other words, it helps to create your statements, even if it's in your own writing, but you still got the idea from a source that you discovered from research, because you're not that much of an expert, and at least most of you aren't in that area. And so even if you are, even myself, if I was writing, I would still research a source to support my position or statement. I wouldn't just say me because I'm professor. No, I would go do some research and find some sources where someone else has done research, and the credible sources. And one of the sources that you never use in your papers. Anybody remember what that source is that you never use in your papers? You can type it in the chat box and I'll see it. Yep, that's right. That's right. You know me. And you get dinged for it. And inevitably, there are students that every course practically I teach that they will use Wikipedia. And I explain, no, even if the information that in there is correct, I still ding them because I said don't use that resource because it's not a credible. Remember, one of the transferable skills that go with finding that. Does anybody remember what the transferable skill though that goes with being able to find credible sources? You know which one it is of the six? Anybody remember? Give you a clue. Starts with an I. Go looking it up real quick. What is it? It's on the tip of your tongue. Well, look in the mirror, stick out your tongue, and see if you can see it. I say that to my kids all the time. Oh, God. You probably won't see it there. It's information literacy. Kara's going to say, I told you it was on the tip of my tongue. Okay. But yeah, information literacy. You guys recall that? Now that I've said it, it reminds me of a person said, "Yeah, that's the right answer." I says, "I know it's the right answer. I wouldn't give you the wrong answer." Okay, so seriously, make sure you use credible resources, not Wikipedia. And then the second part of the assignment is to create a flyer. Now, I run your flyers as well as your papers through Grammarly. Make sure that they're original and creative. Don't just go copying and pasting a flyer because you'll get dinged with that. Okay. But you do have a template that you can use that will help you. Please, 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 please. I say please use the flyer template to help you. Will help you. You don't have to go looking through um, Microsoft. What's that publisher to try to find something. You don't have to do that. There's a template that we included in the course itself that will help you. So you're gonna play the role of a detective in a community where there was a spike in identity theft complaints. Shoot, that could be almost any community in this day and time. It's believed that an awareness campaign can help people, and you've been asked by your commander to create a flyer that'll be distributed to the community by members of the community policing division. So what you're going to do is you're going to create this flyer, identify relevant statistics that relate to identity theft. And for help, you can find this information, and there's a link we give you for that. Um, and be sure that you cite that source that you use. Identify common techniques thieves use to steal identity. Um, and if you have a source, you get it, use that too. Um, and identify common methods that community members use. Yeah, you could use an outside source if you want. But the point of the matter is that you got to cite that source, as long as it's not a source that's not credible, and also make sure that it's not one that's already completed all the information that you need. Create your flyer though from scratch though if you're using Word or Publisher. I'm saying you don't have to, but that's up to you. Or if you prefer, use the template. My personal choice would be um, putting together the template. Some people like using Publisher. That's more power to you. And some of you are already very proficient at it. Yours truly is not. So I would have trouble doing PowerPoints. That is one of the things I admit. I can't do PowerPoints that well. I have to have someone help me if I do a presentation. So anyway, to help you gather information for your flyer, conduct an internet research for FTC and identity theft statistics so you can find that. It says, don't copy paste directly from the internet. Make an original flyer and cite your sources in the appropriate format. I think I already said that. And be sure to use appropriate language. And then we also you have this guide that help you all the time with your written assignments as well, and then submit your assignments into the Dropbox. So now let's take a look at the rubric, which basically mirrors exactly what I just said for 40 points. Here's the rubric broken down, and this is how you'll get 15 of your 40 points by satisfying this part. You'll get 5 of them for satisfying this part, and then you'll get 5 for satisfying this part. And then for the flyer itself, you'll get 15 points for preparing the flyer appropriately. Okay. You can attach them to the assignment. You can do a lot of students like to do zip files, which is okay. I don't mind them. Some students, that's the only way they know how to do it. It's okay. Just takes me a little more time to create it, but it's okay. Either way, you can do it. But please don't submit it as assignment number 1 and assignment number 2, as I've seen some students do. Try not to do that. That makes me have to put a double grade in. That don't mean you get extra points. It just makes me put a double grade in, and then I have to back out of one of them. Okay. So that's the written assignment. Okay. Any questions about it? Okay. All right. Yeah, it's pretty straightforward there. So, and then your live phrase that I will give you. All right. So now let's get into my discussion. Oh, for the next half an hour or so, 40 minutes or so, let's talk about the content. Excuse me. All right. So crimes against property, and then we're going to talk about misappropriation, trespassing, burglary, difference between robbery and strong arm robbery, and robbery and theft as well. So what are crimes against property? We're going to larceny, robbery or burglary, misappropriation, and then conclude with trespassing and vandalism, and then take a few minutes to go over a few of these. So what are crimes against property? As I open my lecture, usually whenever I do this, it's everything that's not crimes against persons. That's true. But specifics that we focus on in the criminal law field deal with things that you know about on a regular basis. You hear about on the news, that you read about in the newspaper, if you still read a newspaper or online newspaper, or if you look at the news on television, or you look at blogs and things like that. And the idea of crimes against property is to mis is to misappropriate or appropriate properties that someone else has for their benefit or damage somebody else's property. And as it says here, most property crimes don't cause physical harm, except some robberies. And we're talking about, when we say physical harm, we're talking about physical harm to a person. And the key is victims, as it says, suffer personal loss to their property. Burglary victims are violated because generally burglary takes place in the home, which is supposed to be a sanctuary or your castle. That's where the castle law comes. And that's where you're most vulnerable at your home. So we have this thing called burglary, and we're going to talk about that in detail. And victims of other crime, most of you have insurance to cover losses, and some people who don't just own their home may rent the home or either have an apartment or a condo. Then they have property insurance that generally will cover um, the loss of that property, but it comes as a result of you losing some because of your deductibles. Uh, and so, and then property crimes affect everybody, particularly if we're dealing with retail theft or either misappropriation or something like that. But those end up, did you not know that retail theft costs everybody, including the people who didn't commit the offense? Uh, does anybody have an idea about why that results? What happens? What happens with the cost of items when retail theft takes place? What happens to the cost of items? Anybody know? Well, it says has to be paid to the owner. Yeah, there you go. You hit it right on the head, Kara. And uh, not directly restitution, but no, because I don't have to restore something to somebody because I'm a customer. No, it's exactly what Kara said. It costs more. And there's an old theory that we learned in law school dealing with what we call the famous Paul's graph case in torts, that is that tort liability caused the ability to be able to satisfy the coverage to be shared across the board, and that operates in terms of theft. So it caused items to go up. That's why they call those things. Today I went and bought a little Roku for my daughter's television. She's not around here. She don't supposed to know about that yet. But anyway, uh, the it was in a clear box, and then they have these little things they stick on there, and they call those anti-theft devices. And the reason why they call them that is because the fact that it makes it harder for you to get it out. And if you have those little thingies, because you know what happens with clothes, where you have that thing stuck in there and they got to take it out. And otherwise, if you try to take it out yourself if you happen to get home without them stopping you at the door where the electronic thing doesn't goes off, and they say just keep going, you can't get it off, because if you get it off on clothing, sometimes it turns the color, clothes a different color, or it tears the material. The bottom line is that those are what they call anti-theft devices, and those are attempts to try to minimize theft, and that it ends up, as they say, as Kara said, being shared by uh, all the people who buy stuff. It costs more. The same thing happens with insurance fraud. And also, you should be aware of the fact that insurance, while I'm just talking about this is a tangential statement I'm getting ready to make, but it still fits the same thing, is that when there are catastrophes that happen, major catastrophes, property owners, uh, generally in the area, even if it didn't affect their property, end up paying the insurance costs. For example, several of you, I know at least one of you is in Florida, and that those of you who listen to this are in Florida, live in Florida, and now in the Carolinas. It's that season, by the way, called, uh, dare I say it, know what season it is? It's a school that has a team named after the season that's in Florida. Yep, the Miami Hurricanes. Hurricane, and Brother Presley knows because he's in Florida. Um, Kara, I think you're in Minnesota, I think. Am I right? Do I remember correctly? Or you're in Wisconsin? Okay, I knew you were in a cold area. Okay. Oh, yeah, you're that Packer person, right? Okay. I won't digress with that, but I will just say this is that I'm not a Packer fan, but I am a Ryan Lancaster fan. If you're a Packer fan, number 95, his name is Ryan Lancaster. He graduated from Northwestern, and he's also one of my form neighbors from Plainfield area. This is yeah, okay, good. See, they're really smart. They call you guys what cheeseheads, right? So anyway, um, Aaron Rodgers may not be one much longer. Okay, come on, Richard. Let's get back on the subject here. But see what you did. All righty. But yes, I am a devout Bear fan myself here. I got some up there that are Bear fans. One of my former students, um, she's actually in one of my class. No, she was in my class. I just completed. So she has, anyway, her husband's a Bear fan. Crimes against property include offenses that we're going to go in more detail right now: larceny, burglary, and robbery, misappropriation, trespassing, vandalism. It is a clue for you to be recognized that these are the crimes that will be focused on, dare I say, midterm exam. All right, so you want to make sure you gather this information and save it in your mind. So we're going to talk about this now. Be aware that crimes vary according to state law. We're not talking about federal law, but each state of the 50 states has its own criminal codes that adopt and define what they are. But these are generally what they are across the board. All right. So larceny is a term that you won't hear us use a whole lot as professionals. We don't usually use larceny because it has been replaced with the word theft. And uh, and theft can be what we call grand theft, or it can be petty theft. Now that's minor, and the difference between the two, just off the top of your head, you should remember, is that one is a smaller amount. Generally, it's under $1,000. The item is what is valued at. In some jurisdictions, it's 500. And so the state of Florida, if you steal something of 299 or less, then it's a misdemeanor, and that's what I'm talking about. Leave it to Florida to always have something different. I never practiced in Florida, never will practice in Florida, and I'm not a big a fan of Florida law. Sorry, people, but that's just my assessment. Maybe it's because I'm biased because I'm a Midwesterner. So yeah, that's the. She said it's strict. Yeah, that's an understatement. But yeah, you're very right. It's hardcore, and like some of the other southern states, Texas is hardcore. And one of the um, states that's really hard, but we don't talk about it a lot because they use Napoleonic code. Anybody know what state that is that uses Napoleonic code? It's only one. We use what we call the civil code throughout the rest of the states. But anybody know what one state uses the Napoleonic code? It's Napoleonic code. If you know about Napoleon, it is a French origin. No, now, yeah, it's in the South. Yep. It's known, I give it away if I say this. It's known for, okay, it's known for gumbo and jambalaya. Oh yeah, now you know, right? Okay. Yeah, it's Louisiana. And they are really, man, woo. I had a person one time that wanted me to represent someone down there, and I said I can do it, but I have to have one of my friends who is a Louisiana attorney, and their laws are totally different from ours, and they're extremely strict. Okay, so anyway, dealing with 299 or less, so the less serious offenses can result in a misdemeanor. And if something is over 300 or over, it's grand theft. Okay. And with a misdemeanor, that means you serve up to 1 year. And generally, where do you end up going for that? Come on, you all. You know the answer. Where do you end up going for conviction of a misdemeanor generally? Yep. And if you commit a felony which sentences you to a year or more, you go where? Yeah. Okay. I think you both said prison, but yeah, it is prison. I'm just testing your knowledge to see if you, by the way, this is going to all carry over later on in an assessment that you're going to do before you leave the school. So I'm one of the professors that periodically will reach back to other classes, and it's not out of line, it's to keep you sharp. So in addition to petty and grand theft, the statutes, as I say, identify theft, break it down to retail theft, auto theft, theft of communications, video, and telecommunications. That's more recent in my lifetime, roughly from the early 80s, late 70s. Um, Video, satellite, cable services. You know, y'all know where people, get that. And I'm not talking about using Roku, and I'm not talking about using Fire Sticks and those kind of things. Um, because did you not know, talking about the cost of things, that because of those items that I just mentioned, um, um, cable services cost more. Same with if you buy a DVD or either MP, not the MP4, that's music, but MP4 applies for music too. But if you any of those devices that are electronic, that you pay more because of individuals able to appropriate, copy, duplicate, and all those different things. So when you buy it, it's costing more. So what I said, crime pays where it costs everybody for to make stuff cost more. So regardless of the type of incident, um, the idea of theft is to permanently deprive the person of the property, not just for a short period of time. Okay, and it can be tangible property, for example, an item taken from a store, or intangible property, such as a video, a satellite signal, like what we were talking about a few minutes ago, uh, even electricity. Um, there are people who do that, that electricity is turned off, or gas, or water, or any of those utilities, and they go back and hook them back up. That's theft. And so you end up being held responsible for that. All right. So one of the big areas is auto theft. And we're going to now jump into talking about that area in right about now. But before I leave theft, I do want to point out to you that theft can take the place of, for example, I had a client I represented once years ago, and she was in college at a school in Illinois, southern part of Illinois, and she was arrested along with several girls for retail theft because they were switching the price tags on the items. And uh, this was before they came up with some of the sophisticated systems. Now, as you now know, it's based on scanning now and those kinds of things. But there's still ways that people work that out. But the point of the matter here is that um, the young ladies were buying some clothing, and they were putting a lower price on there. And so as a result, they were ringing it out, and they were partially paying, but they were basically committing theft. And so they were being videotaped. And when they all left the store, guess who was outside to meet them? Was the friendly store detective. Or now they don't use the term store detective, they use loss prevention officer, or that kind of thing. They don't even use the term security guard anymore. They use those other terms, but loss prevention officer now. So anyway, the point of the matter is that they were arrested, and I represented the young lady who was acquitted because it was determined from the video that I had access to as in my discovery, when I represented her, that she was with them, but she didn't commit the offense. And those who did, then they pled guilty and so forth. But it costs, because once again, it goes back to what I just said, the old spreading the cost across the board. So anyway, vehicle theft. We're going to go over these pretty fast. Of course, you know what vehicle theft is. Stealing a vehicle, which is a car, bus, scooter. Did you know a scooter is a unicycle, motorcycle, all-terrain boats, snowmobiles, um, any other type of thing like that? Those are considered as vehicles. And then this is generally what they call, and this is the old-fashioned way, by the way. You're looking at this picture. They don't do that anymore. They just pop them now. Or either they my car has the little code thing on the outside where you can punch in the numbers uh that you can to get in. And then they have these keyless things, and they have these little devices now that electronically that they can use and get this. It's very sophisticated now. But intentionally operating or driving it without a consent the vehicle of another. So, so stealing the car, and auto vehicle theft is taking the car with the intention of taking it from the owner. I'm not talking about repo people. I'm talking about permanently taking somebody's car that's parked anywhere. Okay. And it says, although it may appear obvious, the act of driving and operating can be two distinct actions. Operating includes necessary to put the vehicle in motion, whereas driving can mean an action that actually moves the vehicle or puts it in motion. Okay, so look at what Wisconsin says, your state, Kara. It requires that an offender manipulate the controls of the vehicle in some fashion, such as starting the car, Now, my wife has a Mercedes, and she has one of those push button starters, and they have more and more. The newer cars now have those. And in order to start the car, then you push those things. You don't even need the key, but the key needs to be close by in order for you to be able to do it. It's an electronic thing. And then in the same statute, it has to be demonstrated that the person drove the vehicle, which is actually drove it and not just started it itself. Therefore, if you use the tow truck to steal a vehicle, then it could be prosecuted also under statute because of the fact that you didn't have to start the motor, but you actually moved the vehicle or drove it and removed it from there. All right, so you're guilty of vehicle theft, okay? And generally, that's a felony because of the value of most cars and vehicles. All right. And then joyriding. Now, here's the difference. There's a difference in joyriding. It says in taking of the vehicle with the intent to permanently deprive the owner of the vehicle is a felony. But this a crime occurs when it's taken without the consent, but there isn't an intent to deprive. But the joyriding occurs when a person takes the vehicle of another with consent, but doesn't intend to permanently deprive it. Joyriding is often captured in what we call unauthorized statutes. For example, prohibits the unauthorized use of a vehicle if the vehicle is returned within 48 hours. Then the offense is a misdemeanor, not a felony. And so anyway, that's not a lack of intent. That's a matter of fact, that is a lack of intent. Now, so that means that you could rent a car and keep it, longer, and you can be considered as joyriding. And if you keep it longer than 48 hours, then you can consider itself as vehicle theft. Another form of joyriding. Anybody know a common form of joyriding? Anybody? Who could be guilty of joyriding a lot of times? But they may not be prosecuted, but they can be guilty of joyriding. Yeah, yeah. But what particular teens are underage generally are not prosecuted? Because the people don't want to press charges. But you know who those are? Yes and no. They are, but I'll go directly to it. It could have been you, could have been any of us. It wasn't me because I didn't know how to drive then. But uh, my wife's niece took her grandmother's car and drove it. Uh, and if she had been arrested, she could have been guilty of joyriding because she wasn't trying to steal the car, but she took it to the store. Have you ever drove in the car? Uh, See, I was just ready to say, now you're incriminating yourself. I guess the statute of limitations is over. So you're not. But yeah, that could be the case. My wife jokingly, she says, um, you took my car and you didn't even let me know, and you took the keys and you drove. I said, okay. She says, well, you stole the car. I says, whose name is on the title with you? My bad. Oh God. But let's say it was an ex-spouse or somebody like that, then you could be guilty of joyriding or either theft. So anyway, the point of the matter is that you're not intending on keeping it permanently. That's the thing I want you to focus on. Okay, I'm spending a lot of time here because I'm breaking these down for you. Carjacking, we already are familiar. This is a rising form of auto theft, where the car is generally either, as it says, like my great state, Illinois, uh, prohibits a person from knowingly taking a vehicle. I like that knowingly part. That means, okay, if you're high and you take the vehicle, are you guilty of the crime? It's an argument that we lawyers can try to make, but we lose most of the time. Knowingly basically amounts to intentionally, knowingly. So we can stretch that. There are judges that agree with us, and the appellate court reverses it. But when the prosecutor takes it further, if it goes that far, taking a vehicle from the person of the immediate presence of the person by use of force or imminent use of force. You need to remember that phrase, from the person or uh, imminent or threat of use of force or imminent force. That's carjacking. Okay. Um, and carjacking prohibits a person from intentionally taking a vehicle from the person or custody of another with the intent to deprive the person or owner. And notice it has to do with force and so forth. Carjacking is like robbery. And that's why I've said that, reserve that when we talk about robbery. So let me ask you a question. You leave your car running and you run into the store and somebody takes your car. Is that carjacking? Does it fit carjacking? You're probably right. However, it depends on how the statutes are written in the jurisdiction. But when you think about the elements of carjacking that I've kind of described already that fit robbery, um, there has to be some danger to the individual there in it. So, um, but who leaves their keys in their cars running? Too many people, even with their kids in it. It's just it's it's crazy, But anyway, the point of the matter is so that's a carjacking. But the general carjacking is where somebody you see in that picture there walks up and they put them in a hood because they usually don't want you to see the face of the person, but they don't care now. It's hoods or caps, or they just walk up and they like your car and they take it, and that's it. And I usually say, give up the keys, don't give up your life. So anyway, that's carjacking. All right. The key thing is, remember, it's a violent form of vehicle theft where the person is generally present. Okay. So now let's talk about robbery or burglary. We've talked about theft already. So let's talk about burglary first. Now, back in what we call the old days, and that was under common law, burglary is defined as the breaking and entering uh, the dwelling of another with intent to steal. The purpose for breaking in was to steal or commit some other crime, any other crime, uh, such as vandalism or arson. But most of the time it was to steal something. At common law, though, there was an element that was essential in order to be able to prove burglary. And this was before statutes were written, which now is different. A common law burglary, this is what we learned in law school to prepare us for understanding burglary, was intended for home and had to occur at the nighttime. Nighttime was a requirement, people. Now, if you pay attention to most burglars, what color outfits do they usually wear? Yep, black or dark. And the reason is because as it goes back to burglary taking place at nighttime, you could blend in with the darkness. That was what that was all about. That's a little point that you'll learn when you go to law school. But it makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. I mean, you break into somebody's house and you're wearing sequin outfits on, or you have neon lights flashing on your clothes. You're an idiot, okay? Because you're drawing attention to yourself, and you should be locked up to a mental institution. But anyway, the point of the matter is that yes, the nighttime. Now that was done away with. We don't, burglary is 24/7 now, people. It can happen day, night, and so forth and so on. Because think about that. If it was in the nighttime and you were in Alaska in the summertime, that means you could only commit burglary probably 2 hours a day if it was in the nighttime. But that's done away with because today burglary can occur not only just in the house, but with a vehicle, like uh, a motor home or something along that lines. Breaking into a vehicle, stealing stuff, is committed as considered burglary. Into a business as well, extended it, or vessel of any type, like a boat or something like that. Now, let me explain something to you. The theory of burglary involves breaking what we call curtilage. This is law school stuff, but I'm helping you with it. The curtilage is an area that's considered outside of your private area. All right. So therefore, if you break the curtilage, even if you don't physically crawl in, but you put a stick, a pin, a finger in the window, then you have technically committed burglary. That's surprising to some people, but that's the situation. So if you break the curtilage with any attachment to you, then you've committed burglary with your intent to commit theft. All right. Does that surprise either of you? Okay. Been around me too much. What about you? All right. Does that surprise you? Yeah, some people are really shocked, and I could tell by your discussion post. Now it's so funny that's why it's important to come to the lecture or listen to the lecture before you do some of those things, like this assignment tonight that you got to do discussion. So I can see people already say, "Man, I got that wrong." That's okay because it's discussion. But if you get it wrong on the test, then you're gonna miss the point. But now I helped you. Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, listen to the lectures because, yeah, wait until the lectures. That's why you're an advantage. You have them early in the week. But anyway, the point of the matter is it is important for you to, and that's why I say live lectures because there's a delay on 24-hour delay on the lecture I did yesterday, by the way, that some of you are in. I think Presley is in. Kara, are you in drugs? No, you're not in drugs and crime with me. You were in Introduction to Corrections with me, right? Oh, you already took it. Yeah. Okay, so the videos are delayed now. Uh, okay. The the videos are delayed now, and so because of the COVID and more people using it. So, but anyway, so we know about burglary now. Robbery. Now let's talk about robbery. Now there's armed robbery, there's strong arm robbery, and there's home invasion robbery. We're going to talk about that really quick, but I want you to get the essence of the elements of robbery because I already kind of introduced it to you when I talked about carjacking. So it's the taking of property of another with the intention, remember, to permanently deprive the person of the property. But there are two other things that have to take place. Must be from a person and must be done using force, intimidation, threat, or violence. So that's again an element for you to consider in terms of your written assignment. Um, People get robbery and theft and use it interchangeably, but they are not the same. They are not the same. Okay. So, and then there's different types of robbery. But remember one of the key elements, permanently depriving a person And then the thing that distinguishes from theft is taking with force, imminent use of force, those kinds of things. All right. Now, so let's talk about armed robbery very briefly. That's basically using a weapon. Okay. So that's all I'm going to say about that. Is a toy gun a weapon? You got that right. I had a young man to pull a toy gun on me when I was a police officer. Thank God I had some compassion and talked to him. I didn't know it was a toy gun, but it's not my role to determine whether or not. So the answer is yes. So it's a weapon. Strong arm robbery is, you see this, taking it off of a person, and it shows you that the person is basically snatching and taking it away. That's strong arm robbery. There's no weapon involved. You are the weapon. But force is used. Okay, that's why it's called strong armed robbery. You might run across that. Remember the elements of robbery, and then think about it in terms of this. Because what some people might have in terms of a multiple choice question is a scenario like this: is this robbery or is this strong arm robbery? Well, it actually fits both, but what's the best answer in the scenario here is strong arm robbery. That's the way you got to think in terms of those tests. Home invasion. This is when you see her, she's in the bed, or either you're sitting there watching TV and somebody breaks into your house. It's like burglary, but they're not there necessarily just to steal something, but they're there to commit a violent offense. Similar to burglary, during a home invasion robbery, an offender enters the dwelling of another without the consent, but uses force to commit a robbery. So we're back to armed robbery in terms of that. So if a person intentionally enters the home of another without consent, commits robbery of the occupants therein. Let's say you break into the house and you don't produce a weapon and the people are there. Is that home invasion or is that robbery? What's the best answer? Home invasion is, yeah, and get the question mark off. You're right. So yeah, it is home invasion because here's what people think. They think that you have to have that weapon. You don't have to. You don't have to. Okay. You could run into somebody's house and the door is open and you go in there and then you break into their house. You come into their house because you've broken the plane. And so you can still be guilty of home invasion. And somebody said, well, wait a minute, couldn't that be a strong arm robbery if they snatch it or take something from the person? Well, here's what the prosecutor will probably do. Charge you in both alternatives. And the key that most prosecutors want is to have the highest amount of time or the most serious offense used first. And then they can reduce it down in a plea to something. Everybody got that? Everybody got what I just said? Okay. So the key is, so that's how that works. All right. So now let's go on. It's already 9:30. All right, you guys just hang out a little more because I'm trying to break this down for you because some of this stuff is going to be on the test. So I try to do it within an hour, but especially when we get to this one and one next week. I try to take a lot of time with it because it saves. I had a couple students come back and say, thank you for breaking it down because it helped me get a higher grade. You're welcome. Send a check in the mail. That's a joke. All right. Somebody take that sound bite and record and play it back. Professor said, send a check in the mail to get a higher grade. Oh, gee. Anyway, misappropriation is similar to theft, but doesn't require the defendant to take or carry away the victim's property. Now, but once gained legally in possession of the victim's property, they use it unlawfully, such as a credit card, such as identity theft, such as welfare fraud, forgery or fraud. And so I'm not going to break all these down. So that's pretty much the way that operates. And some specifics are embezzlement, taking uh, something that you've been entrusted with to take care of. Okay, you're a steward over, then you convert it to your use illegally. Fraud, you know what that is. That's misrepresenting or something along those lines. It could be welfare, applying for welfare when you know you're not shouldn't, identity theft, ways, and then using credit card and things like that. If I give you my credit card and I let you use it, and you use it and you sign my name, is it fraud? Is it credit card fraud? No. There you go. See, now you guys are thinking like a lawyer. I gave permission. Um, I didn't give permission. He just took it. So then it's my word against your word in those kind of situations. But the answer is yes. Is that hold on? Excuse me. Ooh, try not to sneeze. I had to raise my headphones. Thank you. Thank you. Oh boy. Excuse me. As you know, they don't come in ones. So anyway, um, thank you. Okay, so anyway, so that's the case. But no, the key is that you did give permission. So in that case, um, all right, forgery, and that's manipulating a writing, changing it to defraud whoever it is. You're doing it like taking a check, one of my checks, and saying that you're me, or using that kind of thing. Altering, making, endorsing an instrument. Um, what is using my a checking account by using my routing number and my account number? Is that forgery without my permission? Is that forgery? Yes and no. The answer is both of you are right. The key thing is that you are representing yourself as the owner of that item. And so it is theft, but it is technically forgery, because a lot of times you have to, you're leading the person to believe that it's the owner. Now, that could be also identity theft as well. So it could fit loosely into forgery and identity theft. So that's why I said you both are right. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time about identity theft, because you're going to be doing some research on it. But there's all kinds of articles and things in here. Credit card fraud is the same. We already kind of talked about that earlier. Okay. Trespassing and vandalism. Basically, trespassing is that similar to burglary, but you don't have to steal anything. You just go on some property without permission. But the requirement for trespassing has to be a sign that tells you that you're persecuted, that you're crossing the line, private property. Pro Trespassers will be prosecuted. So that means I had a person. Oh God, I have to laugh about this. this is a person in the country, and this was one of my um, friends. He says, you can change that sign. Instead of saying prosecutors will be prosecuted, and put the sign that says prosecutors will be electrocuted. I said, oh, I think you're in trouble if they get electrocuted, because then you're going to have a civil suit because you took the life of someone in a situation like that. Yeah, but they couldn't be able to read it. It's still notice on them. Well, it gets crazy in that sense, but he's kind of a strange individual anyway. But prosecuted, you can go to jail for this or be charged with a fine. All right. Vandalism, it's not uncommon for our property to get damaged. Somebody to, criminal damage to property, breaking and entering, those kind of things, and intentionally damaging some property without consent of another. And that's all I have for today, except before I give you your key phrase, I want to help you, because now this is beyond the lecture. This is to help you. And so let's do maybe a couple of each of these, and then we'll adjourn. You have to go, you can go, but most students, I had a student that asked me if their section was working. I told them, don't try to use any of these other methods because they don't really work that well. Like glossary, okay, I had a student to do it, but and they might have fixed it now because early on I didn't use glossary. Okay, so now they fixed it. So here's a glossary: the unlawful taking of another, um, and it just gives you the definition. Okay, so but anyway, I don't use glossary. I use flashcards because that's the best method. That's just like the test itself. And the intentional damage to the property of another without consent is called what? What is it? The intentional damage to the property of another without consent. Oops. Back to that. Let's flip the card. Criminal damage to property. Okay. So you get vandalism, but yeah, it's criminal damage to property, but yeah. If you had vandalism and criminal damage to property as a choice, you would want to pick criminal damage to property as the best answer. The crime of taking the personal, you know what I just did when I said that, right? If you're in a multiple choice exam, you know how most multiple choice exams work. I'm helping you out, and you should know this by now, that usually there are at least two answers that are not, they're out of the box and they don't fit, and then there are two that are close, right? Everybody recall that when you're taking multiple choice exams? Yeah. Am I right or wrong? Right. Not just because my last name is Wright either, but yeah, no, it's actually, you said sometimes, it's actually like that all the time. I've, in psychology, I took a course and we talked about designers of multiple choice exams as part of one of our projects. And excuse me, it was determined that there are usually two answers that are totally not it. Uh, yeah, yeah, but it always try to look at that. But remember too that there's two in there usually that are close, but the one that you want to pick is the best one that fits closest to the scenario. So as we say, you have to begin to think like the person who wrote the test, that kind of thing. So the answer is the crime of taking the personal identifying information of another to commit fraud is called what? Here we go. All right. So anyway, one quick one. The unlawful taking of property from another by use of threat, using a dangerous weapon, uh, and so forth and so on. What is that? Okay. It's called armed because they gave you the element. But it is robbery. If you had robbery and armed robbery in there, there's a reason why they put the weapon in there in the scenario. So you see what I mean when I said how the test is written? You could be right, but that's not the best answer. Do you see why I said that? Okay, that's what I'm telling you. All right. So anyway, that can help you in other classes too. And also if you take the bar exam, um, then there's a thing called multi-state that we take as well. Okay, so let's close that one. And now let's go to the next type of device that can help you. Hope these things are helping you because they really are super, super things I wish I had around when we used to use just regular flashcards and things. Okay, for practice regarding robbery, burglary, or theft, let's get this going. A 17-year-old boy is walking home from school and approached by two suspects. The suspects shove it onto the ground and take his wallet. What type of crime is this? Okay, Mr. Presley, think about the question. That's what they tell us in law school. 17-year-old boy is walking home from high school and approached by two suspects. They shove him to the ground and take his wallet. Was there any physical force involved? Was there any physical force involved? Threat or intimidation? Okay. Was there a weapon used? Was there a weapon used? So that takes this armed robbery. Definitely wasn't burglary, but it's not theft. She was right. It's strong armed robbery because the physical force was used. Remember that. We talked about that just a few minutes ago. That's a good example of how, excuse me, when you take the exam, that's why I'm taking time to do this way. Most of the students who look at this, they don't say, oh, you went over the time. I says, no, but I'm giving you some things for you to stop and think about. That's the difference in getting it right or wrong. Um, okay, I'm going to see what you said. I think I know what you said. Kind of the thing is snatching a purse from someone. That is exactly what we're talking about. That is that is strong arm robbery as opposed to armed robbery. But let's say they have a gun on them and they snatch the purse. That's dirty pool. I would hope that that wouldn't be a question like that, but that's the kind of stuff they do with us on the bar exam. And so we have to look at for something else. There'll be something else that they would give us so we can home in on the right answer. But I'm just showing you just how that one thing can happen. So, okay. But yes, so in this scenario, there was what Presley forgot was the force part. He forgot about the physical force. And he was thinking that, okay, it wasn't armed robbery because there was no weapon. And the hands, he said, was a weapon. No, uh-uh. It was the force. Remember back when I said it, it was force of threat or intimidation as well. But then I showed about snatching someone, okay, and taking something off of their person. A 14-year-old girl left her bicycle outside on the front lawn. Morning, the bicycle is missing and the family reports the crime to police. What type of crime is this? Okay. Some people get psyched into thinking about the plane. Well, the plane is not just the property line, because that's when we get to trespassing, but the private area there. So is the lawn considered private area for burglary purposes? No. Is it armed robbery? Was it taken from the person? Was it taken either way? So the answer that's left after that, you go through it and it is correct because it was taken without consent. See how my thinking process, and that's the thinking process I want you to have. You see, is that helping you guys in terms of how you do this? Okay. Yep. And you'll from now on probably do better in your exams because of that. And then last one we're going to do on this one is a 25-year-old man is attending a party inside. Now this is a good one here. Inside his friend's house. While inside the house, he breaks into the locked bedroom. Uh-huh. Into the locked bedroom and steals jewelry. The crime is discovered the next day and the victim reports to the crime. What crime was committed? And Kara says burglary. What about you, Presley? Okay. And let's go through. Is it theft? Okay, it could be, but remember, breaks into a locked. When you get that picture in your mind, you don't think of theft. It wasn't strong arm, it wasn't armed. It was burglary because it was an area. Well, not only was it a dwelling, but it was an area that was off limits because he was in the dwelling. Remember, he was already in the house for the party, but he broke into an area of the house that he wasn't invited. So therefore, he committed burglary. So it wasn't. You got to remember, it's not just because it's the dwelling; it's because it was the area that he wasn't into. Let's say if the door was closed and not locked, would it still be burglary? Kara, what do you say, Presley? It's going to be burglary. For the same theory that I talked about, where you went into an area that was you're uninvited and you were already there, but that's just turning the lob is like a breaking and entering. You don't have to have it. Oh, you said something that I'm ready to get rid of for you. I think you said because shut doors assume you shouldn't go in because a shut door in an area in your somebody's house unless, for example, you're telling somebody, the bathroom, and then they go in accidentally in a situation like that. But let's say they go in there and they realize it's not the bathroom and goes in and then they steal something. That's burglary, not theft. Everybody got it? Because yeah, it's shut for a reason. Okay, it doesn't have to be locked. Why are you messing with the door anyway? So you see begin to see how the mind operates in terms of thinking about this. If I was writing this test, my answer for you would be burglary even in that situation. But I'm trying to not only just throw this at you, but explain to you why. Does it make sense what I just said based on what you learned today about how burglary operates? Yes. So that goes with, I'll say this. This is a biscuit. and somebody gonna still miss it, like Debbie did, reaching into the window of Larry's house. Okay, that's the same kind of thing, and it's burglary. Okay, so let's go to the last thing that we're gonna do in here. Okay, let's go back to this, and then we're going to adjourn. Okay, so now keep in mind what I just said. These are general terms for class. And everybody's going to come back and says, yeah, but in my state, I said as a general announcement that all 50 states determine what they are. But I'm teaching you the general elements and aspects of it, because I'm not going to teach you what's in all the 50 states, you know, because everybody's going to have a difference there. All right. Till you get to the bar exam, then you have to deal with that stuff. For a quiz, very important, because these are actually, dare I say, some questions that you may see, and that's where I'm gonna leave it right there. The unlawful entry into the dwelling of another without consent with the intent to commit a robbery is known as what? What's the best answer? You see two that is not fit. Everybody's quiet. What is it? Well, it says the unlawful entry into the dwelling of another without consent, okay, with the intent. What's your intent? To commit a robbery. Commit a robbery. Commit a robbery. Trespassing and theft are out the window. So it's between home invasion or burglary. But with the intent to commit robbery makes it home invasion. Robberies that involve violence or threat of force in the dwellings. Okay, that's it. Excuse me. So that's why you got to be careful about this. You don't just quickly jump. All right. So it doesn't fit trespassing. It's not simple theft because you're taking it from without consent and to commit a robbery. And if you know the elements of robbery already, you know it has to do with some force or something like that, or threat of force. So then it takes out and trespassing. So it leaves you with burglary. So does burglary generally of itself require robbery? No. Okay. You see why I said that? Okay. Is this helping you? Okay. Good. Good. All right. That's why when people come to this, they say, "Oh wow, he broke it down like that. I never thought it. I would have, man, I would have put, got a higher grade here." What crime is, and remember, you only have two quizzes in this course. You have the midterm, which is coming up next week. And so this is prepared. And by the way, your midterm is going to be weeks 1, 2, and 3. When you get to 4, 5, and 6, you won't see 1, 2, or 3 involved. So it's not a comprehensive one. What crime is committed when somebody points a weapon at another person while on a sidewalk and demands that person to turn over personal property? This is going to be tricky. Excuse me. First of all, let's eliminate two. Right off the bat, is it theft? Is it burglary? How come it ain't burglary? No, it's easier than that. Because it's on the sidewalk. Okay. It's on the sidewalk. It's right there. You guys are thinking too deep. It's on the sidewalk. So you know it's not burglary. So it's between armed robbery and strong arm robbery. Demands that the person turn over. That turns it into which one of the two? Okay, I'm gonna fix you on that one. Okay, it's armed robbery. Okay, let me explain to you. I'm gonna show you something. Armed robbery is the taking of another by use of threat. Okay, you see that? You see that, Kara? So that's why it's armed robbery. Yeah, that's why in multiple choice exams, people shouldn't go back and reread them because they mess up. You know that one too, right? But let me explain to you. Here's what we do. What crime is committed when someone points a weapon at another while on a sidewalk and snatches the wallet from the person? Now, what is it? Yeah, 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 yeah. Okay, now you got it. So watch out for those kinds of things. All right, one more, and then we're done. An 18-year-old high school dropout enters the home of a former student while everybody is asleep. Like an 18-year-old high school dropout enters the home. Why you got to be a high school dropout? That's why could it be just an 18-year-old enters the home of a former student while everybody is asleep and steals a video game? What crime has he committed? Okay, Kara says burglary. All right. Okay, let's see if you're right. Yep, because the elements are all there. Now, I don't know why they had to put an 18-year-old high school dropout, and I guess they just had to make it sound like, yeah, this was just a bad dude. But it could have been an 18-year-old um, college student enters the home of a former student or classmate, and wow, everybody's asleep and steals a video game system. So yeah, so it's burglary. It's burglary. It doesn't say criminal damage to property. It wasn't taken by force or threat, and it wouldn't be regular theft because it was in the property. So that's all I'm going to do. You do the rest of them. Here's what I'm going to encourage you to do. Here's what I'm going to encourage you to do. And what I'm going to encourage you to do is to, um, when you do these things, not only do you learn the answer, but why it's the answer. That will help you tremendously in terms of preparing. I learned that technique years and years and years ago, and I was always pretty good with multiple. We used to call them multiple guess questions. Anybody ever heard that term used, multiple guess? Anybody heard that before? No, you haven't heard that? Yeah, and what it means is that basically you get down to two answers, and then you know that two are not, and there are two, and then you pick one on a guess. Try to refrain from that process because you need to understand totally why the answer is the correct one that's chosen. And that's what I just did with you guys. Took a little longer for me to do that, but I think that you'll appreciate that in the long run, because I'm going to do that every week whenever we do these in this class. Okay, so anybody have any suggestions for the key phrase? I already know what I'm going to give you. Anybody? Any guesses? Well, yeah, I already know. That ain't it. It's, what is it? You can almost inevitably realize it has something to do with today's session. That's a good guess. You've been here long, so I'm gonna just tell you. What's the topic of this week? Property crime, property crime, or crimes, either one or the other. Okay, I'm not gonna give you that long a phrase. Property crimes, that's it. Or property crime. Property crime or S or nothing S. That's it. Okay. All right. So I'm gonna say good night to you guys because I got some more grading to do for I got to finish my constitutional law class, which neither you guys know anything about because it's in the bachelor's program that I have to finish tonight because grades are due by 11:59 and I've got about 20 to grade. Good night, guys. I'll see you next week. Hope you enjoyed and learned something today that you didn't know before, and your thought juices were challenged. That's what I wanted to do. So, see ya. Have a good week. Stay safe. Stay healthy. And be careful. Even though I see that there are stages that some of these jurisdictions are opening up. Um, Remember what I told you, um, Presley, wear that mask. I don't know if you guys oh yeah, Wisconsin got something really interesting going on there with the governor and the legislator. I think the governor I think is Democrat and it's controlled. Yeah, you know. Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's a mess over there. I'm kind of concerned about my people who live up in Waukegan, Gurnee, and places Lake of the Hills up there near the border of Wisconsin, uh, because people leave uh, your state and come over. And here we're the governor's catching it because he's he's staunch. He reminds me, him and the Michigan governor are the one's a female and one's a male, and they're both standing firm with recognizing the death rates that are taking place. The whole issue, in a nutshell, to me personally, just for your own information, for me, to my perspective, is I just made 70 on May 3rd, and that I want to see 71, and I want to see 100. But I think that um, it's going to need a vaccine for me before I really feel safe with this. It's just like the polio thing that you guys don't know about. I went through it as a kid in the 60s and late 50s where Jonas Salk invented the polio vaccine, and it cured polio and saved many people's lives. And also, one of my cousins didn't get it, and he ended up with polio. He lived for many years with a limp, and one leg was shorter than the other because of the polio. But I'm just saying that it's the vaccine, and I want something that I know that works. I won't be a guinea pig. Anyway, you saved me from COVID-19, but give me cancer. You know what I'm saying, you guys. So anyway, good night. See you next week.